Yo guys, so welcome to another video of Total Human Optimization. In this one, we're gonna go through a full training session with me, what I'm currently do on the weekend. I have a full body session with a lower body part and an upper body part. You can do and copy that session exactly the same. And before we jump into the workout, I'm gonna quickly explain the thought process behind it, because usually what I do with most of my athletes, especially the professional or more advanced athletes, I'm going to combine that mobility training with the strength training. I think this is super underrated and under-programmed in a way that you put so much effort into your conventional strength training that the mobility part, which is mostly needed and a missing link for most of the training out there nowadays, is not being trained at all, or not with enough intensity and effort so that you can buffer the effect of the sport that you do, right? And get more range of motion, get more access to more muscle fiber activation, therefore also more performance enhancement for the sport that you love or for your exercises that you're doing the conventional strength training. So let's dive into the programming of this workout. It's 30 minutes roughly of the lower body work, 30 minutes of the upper body work. And keep in mind, I always try to start working and warming up that body from the inside out. Movement, as it is created by the central nervous system, is created from the inside out. So therefore, we have to prime the deepest layers of connective tissue, our capsule, before we start with the patternized compound exercises such as the squat, because then the internal environment is already primed to absorb the loads a little bit more efficient and better. And also that movement quality is so much better, and it feels so much smoother if we work on that internal system first before we train the superficial muscles, right? So in the beginning, we have our CARs, our controlled articular rotations. I always start with those as I move the joint through its full range of motion and try to carve out that capsule, all the outer edges of that capsule, to activate the mechanoreceptors lying deep inside of the capsule. Then I always prime the most important and fundamental motion of the primary joint that is being moved in the first exercise, which is in this case the squat. And we're going to need that internal rotation, that hip internal rotation for that. So that's why we're going to prime that hip internal rotation with a specific exercise. Most of you probably know that one in the 1990, but you will see it in a workout video. Then we're going to also add, just for this case, an adduction primer, just a hard isometric, overcoming isometric loading for our adductors to prime that tissue also for the squat. Then we're gonna go into more specific squats, sets and rep scheme. I'm gonna do like 4x6. I'm gonna start with 70% of my 1RM and slowly build it up. I always try to keep, especially in the last sets, to keep a rep in reserve of 2 to not fully blow myself out, because next week I have a testing week of my 1RM, so that's why I'm gonna keep it quite chill here.
So after the primer, after the CARs, I always take out the barbell and move my spine a little bit through that lateral flexion, which is always feeling very, very nice for me when it comes to a squat warm-up. But then straight away, I'm gonna squat with the empty bar for a couple of reps. I'm gonna add just small weights here. This is 60 kilos, and going for very nice, smooth 3, 4, 5 repetitions depending on how I feel on that day. So basically I'm gonna do one warm-up set with a bar, one warm-up set with 60 kilo. Now the third warm-up set, again depending on how I feel, 2, 3, 4 reps with that third warm-up set. And this is already the first working set here with 70% of my 1RM, which is in this case currently 115 kilos. I'm gonna work on those 6 repetitions here, as I just said, on the whiteboard. And I'm gonna focus on That's 360 brace. I'm gonna try to focus on perfect form, full depth and technique here for those 6 repetitions. As it is only 70%, we wanna really focus on that form. This is already my last working set of the 4 sets. I worked up until 130 kilo here for 6. I still got easily, like, let's say 2 to 3 reps in reserve, but very easily. This is also how it's supposed to be, like for my own personal goal here of that session. So yeah, that's the squat part. Let's go back to the whiteboard.
Then in a superset, after every single set, of course it's only 3 sets, so you can start after the second set of the squat. I'm gonna have a hip internal rotation lift off. It's gonna be 5 repetitions. I'm gonna try to work very close to my passive end range, and then I'm gonna have 2.5 to 3 minutes of rest before I go into another set of the squats. Okay, as I said, it's only 3 sets here. The squats are 4 sets. It's just I still want to focus more on that primary compound lift compared to the mobility training. The mobility training is but still important, but not as important as for me in this current block that I'm working in, the strength phase. Then second and last leg exercise is the deep split squats. I'm gonna work on a 3x8 here.
And what I really like about that split squat setup that I use is it allows me to go through full range of motion and puts a little bit more emphasis on the quads. With like normal lunges or Bulgarian split squats, at least with the standard setup, we're gonna focus more on the posterior chain, on the glutes and hamstrings. And this setup allows me to push that knee far over the toes, which then puts more emphasis on the quad. And I really like to go and move through the full range of motion, as I also do it with the squat. The straps really help me to focus more on my legs and not have to worry about the grip at all. I try to take as less of a break in between and changing the legs as possible, just to keep up the time and attention, as I'm gonna have my superset coming up as well.
I'm gonna focus on the other side of the rotation, which is external rotation. We're gonna work on a kinetic stretch. It's an active dynamic stretch in and out through that full range of motion, through external rotation, and a little bit of hip flexion adduction as we're driving down with our body closer to our leg. But we're also going to work on the active component of that external rotation, which is also super undertrained with some lifts. Again, 3 sets here, 3 sets there. As this one is obviously intense, but not our main focus and main exercise, we can go with the same kind of like set and rep scheme here. Okay, so if you want, you can also cut this out and just work on 30 minutes lower body. This is already amazing work because you have 2 compound lifts working on both your hamstrings and quads, building more size, but also focusing on the most fundamental part, motion of the hip, which is internal and external rotation, making sure that those ranges are not only stronger or getting stronger, but also making sure you preserve the health and longevity of the hip joint itself. But if you have time for an hour of workout, let's get spicy. Let's add 2 upper body, like 1 push, 1 pull, and optional we have here bicep, tricep. Okay, we have again a 30-minute block. We're starting with bent over rows, but keep in mind we didn't warm up yet for our upper body. So again, that's why here the arrows are pointed towards the bent over rows, making sure we're gonna start with the cars again, priming the deepest stuff, our joint capsule and the rotators close to our joint capsule before we're going into the conventional strength exercise and strength work. Okay, so shoulder cars, in best case also scapular cars, and then priming that internal rotation here again with a quick 2 repetitions of 5 to 10 seconds overcoming ISO here. Then we're jumping into the bent over rows, quite simple and straightforward, and supersetting this with an external rotation isometric and a lift off.
Yeah, with the bent over rows, I'm just moving again through the full range of motion. I try to control that range of motion as much as I can, not ripping on the bar and driving a lot through my lower back, just keeping the form nice and tidy and clean, paired with some external rotation isometrics here. I'm gonna adjust the bar to the height where I'm not able to lift weight anymore. And from exactly that setup, I'm gonna then apply isometric contractions, first driving my fist, my wrist down into the bench, training the progressive angle of my shoulder joint, and then I'm gonna do the same thing for the regressive, for the closing joint angle, thinking about and fighting for a liftoff, which shouldn't be possible. Right or straight after that, I'm gonna go and focus on 3 liftoffs. So I'm gonna adjust the bench and focus on 3 liftoffs from there, with really nice form and technique, trying not to arch through my spine.
Same thing for the push exercise, the dumbbell incline parallel bench press. Same kind of sets and reps scheme, and now we're working on that internal rotation with some eccentric quasi-isometrics. We're going to focus on 30-second hard work. The band is going to pull us out of our deepest internal rotation. We're going to consistently fight to stay in more internal rotation. And then we're going to have behind the back BTB ISO just to prime the anterior aspect of our shoulder capsule, as we're going to work on that bench press. Our humerus, the head of our humerus translates into the anterior aspect of our capsule while we're going into that deep eccentric and then pushing back up. That's why we want to focus exactly on building a strong internal rotation and strengthening the tissues right here in a kind of similar position with isometrics behind our back. Okay, that's the reason for that.
So yeah, very straightforward here with the incline dumbbell bench press, right, with a parallel grip, focusing on a slower eccentric and really controlling that weight, not arching too much through my lumbar spine, but really controlling that weight for the 8 repetitions here. And then followed up by the eccentric quasi-isometric. It's a very nice partner exercise, but if you don't have a partner or friend training with you, then use this banded setup here, where I really drive my shoulder in deepest internal rotation. And the band is quite hard here that I'm using. That's why I still have the other non-working hand of the non-working shoulder on top of my wrist to further support my working shoulder, so that it's not slingshotting back into that external rotation, so that I can still really fight against that band pulling me out of that range. Once I feel like, okay, I can handle the resistance a lot better without the supporting hand, I am going to release it and fight even more for that or against the band. And then once I'm in my end range, or once the band is not pulling anymore, I'm going to reset and try to do that again. Followed by the isometrics here behind the back. Really get those elbows as far back as possible so you feel a deep stretch in the front of your shoulder, and try not to extend through your lumbar spine. Right? Drive those fists as hard as you can into that back, into your lower back, so you really feel the anterior aspect of your shoulder, the front delt, really fighting hard, working hard, and intensifying that stretch. So really getting that tissue in front of your shoulder much, much stronger.
Optional, you can finish up your bicep and tricep. I always do max 2 sets, going to failure and adding an spicy elbow cars, either with a stick, with a band, or with a dumbbell, for example, going also to failure here to also work a little bit on that elbow mobility. And guys, I have some exciting news with you to share. I'm currently testing my mobility online certification. It's not launched yet, so I'm gonna open up 2 more spots for 2 aspiring coaches or strength coaches who are currently looking to improve their knowledge. If you want to improve your knowledge, if you want to add more value to your coaching, if you want to know how to assess a person and then put all of the findings of that assessment into one individualized mobility program, then this might be the course for you. In this course, I put all of my knowledge in that I learned over the last 10 years of my own career. Everything that I know, you also will know in that mobility certification. So if that's something that interests you, click on the link below, get more information, and get in contact with me. I will be happy to start the certification with you and bring more value to your coaching.